Welcome back. For our top news, in Indian-occupied Kashmir, occupation forces have martyred 4 more youths in Kulgam and Islamabad districts. In the fresh act of state terrorism, the occupying forces martyred the civilians in 2 different cordon and search operations in the districts. The troops martyred 2 youths at Nipora area of Kulgam and 2 at Lalan area of Islamabad district. The cordon and search operations are underway in the districts. The Indian police and troops have sealed all entry and exit points of the areas. The occupation authorities have also suspended internet service in the areas. The Indian forces have martyred 27 innocent Kashmiris during this month. Moving on, Nepal is set to pass its new map from the lower house to officially declare disputed areas with India as Nepalese territory. In a territorial controversy with India, Nepal published its new map showing Kalapani, Limbiadhura and Lilupak as its areas. The vote on the second constitutional amendment is expected to get almost full support of the lower house, which has 275 members. Along with the opposition support, the Madheshi party has also ensured its backing. Meanwhile, Nepalese forces killed 1 Indian citizen and arrested 3 others at its border with India's state of Bihar. The worldwide death count from the new coronavirus has crossed 425,000, while infections jumped over 7.6 million. Brazil has reported 909 more fatalities in the past 24 hours, taking tally to nearly 42,000. In the US, 825 more people died overnight, with the countrywide death toll reaching over 114,000. Further details in this report.
Dozens of US states are grappling with the rising number of coronavirus patients filling hospital beds. Top US infectious disease official Anthony Fauci has cautioned that rising hospitalizations can get out of control in absence of vigorous tracing. Meanwhile, Brazil's COVID-19 death toll has overtaken that of the UK to become the second highest in the world after the US. The Mexico City's mayor said the capital will lift restrictions on traffic and public transport from the next week, despite over 500 new deaths in the country. In Chile, army has come out on streets to safeguard the coronavirus lockdowns and curfews in the country.
Our efforts to contain the virus have increased after what we have seen. People are not respecting the quarantine, and in the last few weeks with the number of infections every day, controls are becoming more rigorous.
France says it will gradually reopen its borders with countries outside the Schengen zone from July 1st. Poland says it is also opening its borders for EU citizens starting from today following the COVID-19 lockdown. Britain's Transport Secretary has defended the country's quarantine, saying it was the right thing to be doing.
Been fighting this virus, getting the R number below 1. What we don't want to do is, end up sort of essentially re-importing it, either by people coming here or Brits going abroad and coming back. So I think the idea of quarantine is the right thing to be doing, and I note that it has broad public support.
In the meantime, Egypt and South Africa have reported the highest daily increase in coronavirus cases since the pandemic began in the region.
Pakistan has reported its highest number of new coronavirus infections in a single day. The Health Ministry reported nearly 6,000 new infections, exceeding the toll to over 132,000. It said 88 people died during the past 24 hours, raising the tally to 2,551. The ministry said over 50,000 patients have recovered so far across the country. It said the province of Punjab leads in the number of cases with over 50,000 infections, while the province of Sindh is behind with over 49,000 cases. North Korea has warned South Korea of regretful and painful times ahead, saying Pyongyang has lost its confidence in Seoul. In a statement, United Front Department Director Jang Kum-chol said Seoul has failed to back up its promises with tangible actions. Jang said Seoul did not deal with activists flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the north and legislate a ban on the practice as promised. He accused Seoul of lacking concern for the inter-Korean relations and urged South Korea to respect the 2018's Panmunjom Declaration. The Panmunjom Declaration calls for complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and improving inter-Korean relations. During the past weeks, Pyongyang has strongly protested the leaflet campaigns and threatened stern measures that could affect inter-Korean relations. China has rejected a recent report by the UK criticizing Beijing's national security legislation for Hong Kong. Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the city's affairs are China's internal matter in which no foreign entity has the right to interfere, while the Foreign Ministry's commissioner in Hong Kong said Britain seriously trampled on the principles of international law. The commissioner said China and Hong Kong governments reject the UK's interference. Earlier, London said any solution to the unrest in Hong Kong must come from the former colony itself and not from Beijing. In a biannual report on Hong Kong, Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said all sides must invest in dialogue and reconciliation. Beijing said the security law is aimed at tackling secession, terrorism and foreign interference in Hong Kong. In Lebanon, hundreds of people have taken to the streets across the country amid escalating protests as Beirut faces a collapse in its currency. Demonstrators in multiple Lebanese cities set fire to roadways and clashed with security forces in a second night of unrest. The depreciation of the Lebanese pound has plunged the country into its worst economic crisis in decades. Many Lebanese citizens who rely on hard savings have fallen into poverty. Earlier, President Michel Aoun said the central bank will begin injecting dollars into the market from Monday in order to strengthen the currency. Speaking at a cabinet session, Aoun said huge losses to the financial system should not be borne by depositors but by the government. Tehran has rejected a UN report that said cruise missiles used in attacks on oil facilities in Saudi Arabia last year were of Iranian origin. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry said the report had been drawn up under U.S. influence. It said these findings come at a time when Washington is working to draft a resolution to extend an arms embargo against Tehran. Earlier, Iran called on Russia and China to resist a push by the U.S. to extend a UN-imposed embargo. Meanwhile, Iran has urged South Korea to release billions of dollars in funds frozen due to U.S. sanctions. President Hassan Rouhani instructed the central bank's head to follow up the matter through legal channels and international forums. In the U.S., the anti-racism demonstrations calling for justice system reform have entered their 18th consecutive day. Hundreds of protesters barricaded the Capitol Hill neighborhoods in Seattle. Seattle's Mayor Jenny Durham has rejected President Donald Trump's suggestion to deploy the military to dispel protesters in the area. Meanwhile, Trump has called for an end to the use of chokehold that killed George Floyd in Minneapolis last month. But the president said employing the restraint would be understandable if a police officer is confronted with potentially lethal force. In New York, the state government has adopted a series of laws designed to put an end to police brutality against the minorities. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo signed 10 laws, including a ban on chokeholds.
New York State Legislature has quickly passed the most aggressive reforms in the nation. I'm going to sign those bills in a moment. 58 reforms, so there's transparency. We're banning chokeholds, Attorney General Special Prosecutor, ending false race-based 9/11 reports.
As protests against racial injustice continue across the world, artists have joined in to bring colors to the demonstrations. Artists are painting George Floyd's murals in tribute to the African American who died in the U.S. after a white police officer knelt on his neck. Let's find out more in this report.
Pakistani trucks are famous for their flamboyant appearance with elaborate patterns and murals known as truck art. In the country's southern port city of Karachi, the video of Floyd's custodial killing had a profound effect on the truck artist Haider Ali. Ali painted a mural of Floyd on the wall of his house as he says the incident left him disturbed and restless.
मैं समझ रहा था कि शायद ये अभी छोड़ देगा.
When I saw the video of George Floyd, I was thinking the cop will leave in the next moment. But then I saw they killed the poor man brutally. I stopped watching television and I came upstairs so I could not bear it watching anymore. The scene kept repeating in my mind and it was very cruel. Then I made this painting. I painted these candles and I made these flowers as a garland around his neck to pay him tribute.
Also in the Afghan city capital, artists painted a mural of Floyd on a blast wall, joining protests against police brutality and discrimination. The group behind the painting is Art Lords and views art as a tool for social change. They are known for painting murals with messages of peace and social justice on concrete blast walls in Kabul that were erected to ward off militant bombs. The residents of the city expressed the horrors of the incident.
I watched the incident online and it was very painful. When the helpless man wanted to escape death, the police did not release him and caused his death. I also live in a country that has witnessed war for 40 years, a war in which discrimination is used.
At the Berlin Wall, a large portrait of Floyd is seen alongside spellings, "I can't breathe," words he repeated before dying. In the US, the UK, Syria, Palestine, and many more countries as well, artists have painted Floyd's murals with his last words.
We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin has made his first public appearance after weeks of lockdown to celebrate the country's National Day. The president used the Russian Day holiday to promote a reform of the constitution which could keep him in office until 2036. Speaking at a flag-raising ceremony in Moscow, Putin said all Russians have a common historical code, morals, and the love for the soil. He urged Russians to turn out and vote for the constitutional reform in a referendum on 1st July. His last public appearance was on 9th May when he attended a Victory Day ceremony. Earlier this week, Moscow lifted lockdown curbs despite a huge number of COVID-19 cases. In Pakistan, at least one person has been killed and 15 others wounded in an explosion in Punjab's Rawalpindi city. Police officials say 3 children were also among the wounded in blast in Sadr area. They said properties around the site of the explosion have also been damaged. Police said the nature of the blast is not yet clear, but initial reports suggest that the explosive material was planted in a nearby electric pole. India has reported a record daily increase of coronavirus cases, becoming the world's 4th worst hit country. This has raised the prospect of the return of a lockdown just days after it was lifted. The Health Ministry reported 11,000 cases overnight, with new infections rife in major cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai. India's total number of infections is now nearly 300,000, overtaking that of the UK. The country's death toll has reached nearly 8,500. Earlier, the Supreme Court sought a report from Delhi authorities saying patients faced a horrendous situation in packed hospitals. The city needs 80,000 hospital beds by the end of next month, as it currently has only 11,000. In Brazil, the lagoons and the seaside of the capital, Rio de Janeiro, are filled with couches, toys and tires amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Up close, the waters are murky, thick with sewage, discarded furniture, and old toys. More in this report.
The dolphins and sharks sleeping and swimming in Rio de Janeiro's Guanabara Bay belie a dangerous problem of contamination. Pollution is an old problem of Brazil that has plagued the Bay and Tijuana and Jacarepagua lagoons. The recent worldwide pause and lockdowns of coronavirus pandemic has less impact on pollution reduction. The recent worldwide pause and lockdowns of coronavirus pandemic has less impact on pollution reduction. Today, it remains littered with garbage, bottles, plastic bags, lids, shoes, and tires.
Here, because of the lagoon system in the Jacarepagua lowlands, a neighborhood that borders the Jusa lagoon, the problem is garbage and sewage. People have not stopped going to the bathroom because of the pandemic. Now they go more because they are more at home. So the problems remain exactly the same, and unfortunately the garbage is still in the rivers.
Fishermen say there is a resurgence in marine life due to lockdown, but the pandemic appears to have made little dent in the pollution. A fisherman, Jesus Coutinho, works on the bay. He believes the coronavirus pandemic has largely helped worldwide environmental efforts.
This pandemic, on one hand, killed a lot of people, but on the other hand, it made a good contribution to nature.
According to statistics, Tijuana has 6.5 million cubic meters of mud and garbage, which grows with each new rain.
This is a garbage deposit where part of the population throws everything into the rivers, and the rivers end up like this.
According to the Bahia Viva environmental movement, pollution affects some 100 coastal lagoons of Rio de Janeiro state coast.
New Zealand's North Island is suffering from a severe drought without any significant rainfall since last November. From January to April this year, Auckland had 77 consecutive days without rain, setting a record for the driest history. Details in this report.
Auckland is the largest city in New Zealand with 1.5 million people. Due to the coronavirus drought, the water storage to the city's two main water reservoirs has fallen severely. Relevant data shows that at present, the average storage capacity of the two reservoirs has dropped to 43%. This is the first time in more than 20 years that the storage has fallen below 50%.
Normally, our storage would have been around 75–76% full. So we've got a deficit, a shortage of 30% of storage because of the low rainfall.
The government has announced restriction on water usage. Residents are not allowed to use outdoor pipes to water flowers and plants, wash cars or clean ground and houses. Meteorological experts says climate change is an important factor causing the extreme weather.
June, maybe part of July, probably going to be a bit drier. We're hopeful, fingers crossed, that late winter, August, we start coming out of that dryness.
Farmers are especially hard hit by drought, with losses in agriculture expected to shave about 1% of economic growth. National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research says the North Island drought is the worst in 50 years.
Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey says he will be ready to take action to help the UK economic crisis amid coronavirus pandemic. This comes after the figures show the economy shrunk by 20.4% in April, the largest monthly contraction on record. Bailey said Britain is still very much in the middle of a pandemic, but the figure was in line with what the bank has expected. He said there are signs of the economy now beginning to come back to life as the government lifted some lockdown restrictions. The Office for National Statistics said April's historic fall affected all areas of activity as large parts of the economy remain shut to battle the pandemic. The contraction is 3 times greater than the decline seen during the 2008 economic downturn. The International Monetary Fund says governments around the world have spent $10 trillion to combat COVID-19 pandemic and its economic fallout. In a blog, Fund's Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva wrote further efforts are needed to contain the fallout. Georgieva said it is very likely IMF will further cut its April forecast for 3% contraction in global output. She said to promote a more inclusive recovery, further spending should focus on minimizing job losses and preventing a rise in inequality. Georgieva said COVID-19 crisis is inflicting the most pain on those who are already vulnerable, which can lead to a significant rise in income inequality. The EU Aviation Safety Agency has certified for flight the world's first fully electric aeroplane, the Pipistrel Velis Electro. In a statement, the aviation body said this will pave the way for environmentally sustainable and emission-free aviation. EAS Executive Director Patrick Kai said this is the first electric aircraft but will not be the last. Velis Electro is a 2-seater aircraft intended primarily for pilot training. The certification process was completed in less than 3 years. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.